The Zephyrian trade hub existed as a monument to galactic sophistication, a gleaming testament to what happened when advanced civilizations decided to play nice together. Suspended in the neutral zone between three major star systems, it housed representatives from 47 different species, all conducting business with a kind of refined diplomacy that only came after millennia of not blowing each other up. Well, mostly not blowing each other up. The Grak'tor still had that unfortunate incident with the Veltar moon colony, but who was keeping track anymore? What made Zephyrian particularly special wasn't its advanced quantum mesh architecture or its revolutionary bioatmospheric processes. No, what made it truly remarkable was its recent addition to the Galactic Commerce Coalition, humans. Those delightfully fragile newcomers from the third rock orbiting an unremarkable yellow star had somehow convinced the galaxy's elite that they deserved a seat at the big kids' table. How adorable! The established species had their roles well defined. The Grak'tor handled security with their characteristic blend of brute force and tactical genius, their scaled hides capable of deflecting plasma bolts while their warrior culture kept everyone else in line. The Thelani managed diplomatic relations through their telepathic abilities, reading intentions before conflicts could escalate. The Vorthak supervised technological infrastructure, with their forearm efficiency and mechanical intuition that bordered on the mystical. Each species had earned their place through demonstrated superiority in their respective fields. Then there were the humans, bless their soft little hearts. Nobody quite knew what to do with them. They weren't particularly strong. A Grak'tor child could bench press 3 adult humans without breaking a sweat. They weren't telepathic like the Thelani, couldn't interface directly with technology like the Vorthak, and lacked the natural environmental adaptations that made other species useful in extreme conditions. What they did have was an irritating persistence and an odd knack for showing up wherever they weren't supposed to be, usually with helpful suggestions that everyone politely ignored. In the engineering section of Zephyrian's lower levels, this dynamic played out daily with the kind of tedious predictability that would make a Vorthak chronometer jealous. Mira Chen, the station's lone human maintenance engineer, had grown accustomed to being treated like an exotic pet that someone had accidentally trained to use tools. Her colleagues meant well, in that patronizing way that made her seriously consider introducing them to the business end of a plasma wrench. Careful with that power coupling, little human, rumbled Grak'tor, a Grak'tor technician whose idea of subtle was whispering in a voice that could shatter reinforced transparent steel. Those conduits carry enough energy to fry your delicate nervous system. Mira looked up from where she was elbow-deep in the power coupling in question, having just finished recalibrating the entire assembly. Thanks for the concern, Zex. I'll try not to accidentally electrocute myself with the equipment I've been working on for 6 months. That's the spirit, Grak'tor beamed, completely missing the sarcasm. Humans are so brave, even when they don't understand the dangers. The Vorthak supervisor, Quindar, extended 2 of his forearms in what passed for a supportive gesture among his people. Perhaps Mira should handle the diagnostic subroutines while we manage the primary systems. Safer for everyone. Safer for everyone. Right. Because the human who had designed half the efficiency improvements in this section couldn't be trusted with actual engineering work. Mira bit back her response and focused on her task, reminding herself that interspecies incident reports were a paperwork nightmare. The morning proceeded with its usual rhythm of casual condescension. The Thelani communications officer, Velsha, kept projecting feelings of maternal protectiveness whenever Mira handled anything more complex than a basic scanner. The Grak'tor security detail made a point of coincidentally patrolling the engineering section whenever maintenance schedules called for potentially hazardous work. Even the cleaning drones seemed programmed to hover anxiously near her workstation. It wasn't malicious, which somehow made it worse. These beings genuinely believed they were being considerate by treating her like a child playing dress-up in an adult's job. The fact that she consistently outperformed expectations was viewed as charming rather than competent, like a particularly clever pet that had learned to fetch the newspaper. The irony wasn't lost on her that a species capable of developing faster-than-light travel and quantum manipulation technology could be so breathtakingly dense about the creatures standing right in front of them. But then again, the galaxy had always had a blind spot when it came to recognizing potential in unexpected packages. Things changed on a Tuesday. Well, What passed for Tuesday in a station that operated on Galactic Standard Time, while serving beings whose circadian rhythms ranged from 37-hour cycles to species that didn't sleep at all? The artificial designation mattered less than the fact that Station Commander Thexolan had decided this particular day was perfect for a surprise inspection of critical systems. The inspection revealed what Mira had been warning about for weeks. The primary life support matrix was operating at 170% capacity due to increased station population, and the secondary backup systems hadn't been properly maintained since before humans joined the coalition. In layman's terms, they were one minor system failure away from turning Zephyrian into a very expensive tomb floating in space. "This is unacceptable," Commander Thexolan declared. His Crovaxy features set in the kind of expression that usually preceded someone getting launched out an airlock. "How did our advanced monitoring systems miss this degradation?" Quindar's forearms gestured in a complex pattern that indicated technical confusion mixed with defensive posturing. The systems showed green across all primary indicators. The degradation occurred in subsystems that our protocols don't typically monitor at this frequency. "Respectfully, Commander," Mira interjected, "I submitted a report 3 weeks ago detailing exactly this problem. The subsystem monitoring protocols were designed for the original station capacity, not the current population levels." The assembled department heads turned to look at her with the kind of surprised expressions usually reserved for discovering that furniture had suddenly developed opinions. Commander Thexolan's eye ridges furrowed as he processed this information. "You predicted this failure." "I predicted this failure, outlined the specific risk factors, and proposed a maintenance schedule that would have prevented it." Mira's voice remained carefully neutral, though internally she was calculating the statistical probability that anyone had actually read her report. The odds weren't encouraging. Why wasn't this report escalated? The commander's question was directed at Quindar, whose chromatic skin plates shifted to an uncomfortable shade of blue-green. "Well, so, it came from the human engine. We assumed. That is, we thought it might be better to have our senior staff verify the technical analysis before treating a professional assessment professionally," Mira suggested helpfully. The awkward silence that followed was broken by the gentle chiming of emergency alerts throughout the station. Because apparently the universe had a sense of dramatic timing. "Life support efficiency dropping to critical levels in sections C through G," announced the station's AI in the kind of calm tone that made impending disaster sound like a minor scheduling inconvenience. Estimated breathable atmosphere remaining, 4 hours, 37 minutes. Commander Thexolan's expression shifted from annoyed to focused with the kind of speed that explained how the Crovaxy had conquered half their home system before discovering diplomacy. "Options. We can reroute power from non-essential systems and hope the primary matrix holds together long enough for proper repairs," Quindar offered. "Estimated success probability, 37%. Or we can manually bypass the failing subsystems and implement a temporary matrix using the auxiliary power grid," Mira said. "Success probability, 92%. "What's the catch?" Commander Thexolan asked, because he wasn't stupid, just occasionally prejudiced. "The bypass requires someone to physically access the primary coupling while it's active. Radiation exposure would be significant." The room fell silent except for the gentle humming of life support systems that were currently in the process of giving up on life. The assembled aliens exchanged the kind of looks that clearly communicated their collective thought process, definitely not letting the fragile human anywhere near lethal radiation. "I'll handle the bypass," declared Grak'tor, the station's chief of security and a Crovaxy whose idea of subtle problem-solving involved controlled explosions. "My hide can withstand radiation levels that would reduce most species to glowing particles." "The coupling requires precise calibration," Mira pointed out. "One wrong adjustment and you'll overload the entire grid. Are you familiar with quantum flux modulation theory?" Grak'tor's confident expression faltered slightly. "I'm familiar with hitting things until they work correctly." "That's not really applicable here." "Then you'll talk me through it from a safe distance," he decided. Problem solved. Mira stared at him. "You want to perform precision engineering work based on verbal instructions while being actively irradiated and possibly dying. Better than risking our resident human," Grak'tor replied with the kind of paternalistic certainty that made Mira's eye twitch. Humans are too valuable to lose over something this dangerous. I'm the only person on this station qualified to perform this repair. Which is why you'll be safely coordinating from the control room, Commander Thexolin agreed. We can't risk losing our human engineer over a maintenance issue. The fact that everyone was nodding in agreement while facing imminent death rather than let her do her actual job finally pushed Mira past the point where politeness mattered more than survival. She started toward the access corridor leading to the primary coupling, only to find herself blocked by Grak'tor's considerable bulk. "Stand down, little engineer," he rumbled kindly. "This isn't a job for someone of your constitution." "My constitution. Fragile. Delicate. You know, human." He gestured vaguely at her entire existence. "We appreciate your technical knowledge, but let the warriors handle the dangerous work." Mira looked up at the security chief, who outweighed her by roughly 200 pounds and possessed natural armor plating that could deflect small arms fire. Under normal circumstances, she might have engaged in further diplomatic discussion about professional qualifications versus physical attributes. However, these were not normal circumstances. These were circumstances where everyone on the station would be dead in 4 hours because of stubborn stupidity masquerading as protective concern. So she punched him in the face. The sound of knuckles connecting with Krovaxi facial armor echoed through the engineering bay like a thunderclap. Grak'tor, Chief of Security, veteran of 3 interstellar conflicts, and owner of reflexes quick enough to snatch plasma bolts out of midi, went down like a sack of crystallized methane. The silence that followed was the kind of profound quiet usually reserved for deep space or the moment before a supernova. Every being in the room stood frozen, trying to process the impossible sight of their delicate human colleague standing over the unconscious form of their most formidable security officer. Did the human just? Quindar's vocalization unit seemed to be experiencing technical difficulties. Neutralize our chief of security with a single strike. Velsha finished, her telepathic abilities apparently useless when faced with something this unprecedented. Mira flexed her fingers, checking for damage. "Everybody still breathing? Great. I'm going to fix the life support now. Try not to die while I'm gone." She stepped over Grak'tor's prone form and headed for the access corridor, leaving behind a room full of aliens who were rapidly reassessing their understanding of human physiology. Behind her, she could hear the hesitant sound of Quindar's vocalization unit attempting to form words. Should we stop her? Are you volunteering?" Commander Thexolin asked dryly. The primary coupling chamber was exactly as uninviting as advertised, cramped, poorly lit, and filled with the kind of ambient radiation that would turn most organic life forms into glowing soup within minutes. Mira pulled on her environmental suit and began the delicate process of bypassing 37 different safety protocols while recalibrating quantum flux parameters in real time. The work itself was routine, the kind of maintenance task she could perform in her sleep if sleep involved avoiding lethal radiation exposure. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was risking her life to save beings who had spent months treating her like a liability. But that was humans for you, stupid enough to help people who considered them expendable, stubborn enough to do it right. 27 minutes later, she emerged from the coupling chamber to find the entire engineering staff waiting for her with expressions ranging from bewildered to impressed to mildly terrified. Grak'tor had regained consciousness and was sitting on the floor, one hand pressed to his jaw while he stared at her with the kind of fascination usually reserved for newly discovered physical laws. "Life support restored to full capacity," Mira announced, stripping off her radiation suit. "System efficiency is now at optimal levels for current station population, and the modifications should prevent similar failures for at least 6 months." "How?" Commander Thexolin paused, apparently searching for the right words. "How did you know you could survive that radiation exposure?" Mira shrugged. "I didn't. But someone had to fix it, and I was the only one qualified. Sometimes you just have to do the job." "But humans are supposed to be fragile," Grak'tor protested, his voice slightly muffled by what was probably a fractured jaw. "Delicate. Soft. Who told you that?" The assembled aliens exchanged uncomfortable glances. The answer, it turned out, was that they had told each other that. Repeatedly. with great conviction and absolutely zero actual research into human capabilities. Over the following days, as word of the incident spread throughout the station, something interesting happened. The various species that made up Zephyrian's population began actually looking up information about their human colleagues, rather than simply assuming they understood them. What they discovered was mildly alarming. Humans, it turned out, were persistent hunters evolved from creatures that killed prey by literally running them to death across vast distances. Their cardiovascular systems were built for endurance that would exhaust most other species. Their skeletal structure was designed to withstand impacts that would shatter beings with more sensible bone density. And their pain tolerance, developed through millions of years of surviving in environments that actively tried to kill them, was frankly disturbing. Did you know, Velshaw mentioned during a staff meeting, that humans can continue functioning with injuries that would incapacitate most other species? There are documented cases of humans walking several kilometers with broken bones. Their muscle density is also significantly higher than our preliminary assessments indicated, Quindar added, consulting data on a portable display. We may have been slightly incorrect about their physical capabilities. Grak'tor, whose jaw was healing nicely thanks to Crovaxi regenerative medicine, nodded thoughtfully. I've been reviewing human military history. Did you know they have something called extreme sports that they participate in for recreation? Voluntarily. Commander Thexolan leaned back in his chair. Are you telling me we've been treating a species of endurance predators like decorative pets? The uncomfortable silence that greeted this question was answer enough. In the weeks that followed, station policies underwent what administrative personnel diplomatically termed routine updates. The Human Crovaxi Combat Sports League was quickly disbanded after its first match ended with 3 hospitalized Crovaxi warriors and 1 mildly winded human. Duty rosters were revised to reflect actual capabilities rather than assumed limitations. And maintenance schedules were updated to include regular reviews of reports submitted by human staff members. Mira found herself promoted to Chief of Engineering, despite protests from some quarters that the position was too dangerous for someone so valuable. Her new office came with a view of the main docking bay and a door that actually closed when she needed to concentrate on work without helpful supervision. She was reviewing system diagnostics one morning when her door chimed. Grak'tor entered, moving with the careful respect generally reserved for beings who could flatten you with a single punch. Chief Chen, he began formally. Just Mira is fine, Grak'tor. Unless your jaw still hurts when you pronounce multiple syllables. The security chief's expression shifted to something that might have been amusement if you squinted in the right light. I wanted to discuss the new security protocols for engineering sections. The ones where your people actually trust my staff to handle dangerous equipment. The ones where we acknowledge that your staff might be more capable of handling dangerous situations than previously assessed, he corrected diplomatically. Mira nodded approvingly. I like the diplomatic phrasing. Very evolved. We're trying to be more culturally sensitive. Good policy. Anything else? Grak'tor hesitated, then asked the question that had apparently been bothering him for weeks. Why didn't you mention that humans were capable of this level of physical performance? We might have treated your people differently if we'd known. Mira leaned back in her chair and considered the question seriously. Would you have? Or would you have decided we were dangerous instead of delicate and found new reasons to exclude us from important work? The security chief's uncomfortable expression suggested she'd hit uncomfortably close to the truth. Besides, she continued, we tried to tell you. Reports, demonstrations, casual mentions of our capabilities. You just weren't listening. You'd already decided what humans were, and everything was said or did got filtered through those assumptions. So you let us continue believing you were harmless. I let you continue believing whatever made you comfortable until it became a problem that threatened lives. Then I solved the problem. She gestured toward her workstation, where system diagnostics showed optimal performance across all sections. It's what engineers do. Grak'tor nodded slowly, processing this information with the deliberate care of someone who had recently discovered that their understanding of the universe was incomplete. For what it's worth, I apologize for underestimating your capabilities. Apology accepted. Try not to make the same mistake with the next batch of humans. Next batch. Mira smiled, the expression carrying just enough edge to remind him that humans found amusement in the strangest places. "Oh, didn't you hear? The coalition approved expanding human presence throughout the trade networks. Apparently, someone submitted a report praising our unique problem-solving abilities and robust performance under pressure." The color drained from Grak'tor's face as he contemplated a galaxy full of beings he had fundamentally misunderstood. How many humans are we talking about? Well, Earth has about 8 billion people, and they are all getting pretty curious about this whole galactic civilization thing. As Grak'tor left her office with the expression of someone who had just realized they'd been playing with a nuclear device they'd mistaken for a child's toy, Mira returned to her diagnostics with a sense of satisfaction. The galaxy was about to get a lot more interesting. Outside her window, a transport ship was docking with the kind of routine precision that characterized daily life on Zephyrian. But there was nothing routine about the cargo manifest she'd seen earlier. 63 human specialists in various fields, all eager to contribute to galactic civilization. All of them soft, delicate, fragile humans who could run marathons in environmental suits, solve complex engineering problems while being actively irradiated, and apparently punch through Krovaxi armor plating when properly motivated. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations were about to learn what Earth had always known. It wasn't the size of the species in the fight, it was the size of the fight in the species. And humans, those deceptively harmless creatures from the third rock around an unremarkable star, had been fighting for survival since before most galactic species had discovered fire. It was going to be educational for everyone involved. Mira pulled up the next maintenance schedule and settled in for a productive day of keeping the station running. After all, someone had to mind the shop while the galaxy figured out that their newest members might be just a little bit more than they'd bargained for. The universe, as always, had an excellent sense of irony.